in metros our size. But we want to be able to go toe to toe with the Washington, D.C.'s, New York's, Chicago's, San Francisco's of the world when it comes to saying you should come here, real America, the crossroads of America, and be in front of real people who are really curious and really hungry and really excited to hear from these folks.
I tell you what, there there's such a an arc to the topics, right? Is I think I asked Furky this when with the big announce. Is there a theme? And there kind of is because it's like getting ready for America 250, right? A little bit.
So in many ways, Joel, you're absolutely right. So naturally, we are now embarking upon the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which really is the cornerstone of the founding period of America, and gives us the framework that we have for our current democracy. So absolutely right that this is something that the JES, along with many other organizations, not just in Erie, but Commonwealth-wide in Pennsylvania, but also nationwide, will all be talking about this monumental milestone, what it means, that we are now 250 years removed from declaring our independence and what that means and how that's been expanded over time. But one of the things I always tell people too, Joel, when they say like, what's the theme of the Global Summit is like, I kind of pull a Seinfeld here and say like, the theme is there is no theme. And I say it jokingly, but I say, like the Jefferson Educational Society is named after Jeffersonian education, the idea that we can appreciate international diplomacy as much as we can appreciate poetry, as much as we can appreciate agriculture, as much as we can appreciate domestic politics, as much. And so in many ways, we try to satisfy that with a range of topics because, no doubt, I have the most confidence in this lineup, our most ambitious today. There is something that will excite everyone just a little bit. And our hope is that once you come and you experience our programming, hang out with us, learn from these folks, you'll be willing to say, that program next week looks pretty interesting. I want to come back. I want to be part of this community. I want to be part of this learning opportunity. And then that really helps engage our folks, our attendees, and provide them a well-rounded approach to education.
Let's before we jump into the week by week of the remaining 16 events, I got to ask you about the 44th president of the United States, President Obama's appearance at the Erie Insurance Arena. Now, when that was announced and when tickets went on sale, literally, pretty much the arena was sold out within hours. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of the lead up to being able to have the ultimate get, which is a former president, right?
Well, and Joel, this speaks back to, we don't just talk, we listen. And one of the things that we've heard over the years is, wouldn't it be great if? And of course, we hear a range of speakers, but always top of the list has been President Obama. What clearly benefited us is having hosted a former U.S. president, the 43rd president of the United States of America, President George W. Bush, back in 2021, and I was fortunate. I was fortunate to be a member of that team, and so to be able to say that we've done this before, and that goes really to give a lot of thanks to President Bush and his team for having the confidence in us to carry out such an event that we can entertain invitations like this. Now, naturally, it's easier to get a hold of some folks than others. You might be free in a couple of weeks, you might be free in a couple of months. Even though they're not sitting U.S. presidents, their schedules are pretty demanding. So this is something that our team's been working on for a number of years and working to get this and say, here is why this matters. Here's why you should come to Erie, Pennsylvania. Here's why you should be in front of an audience of nearly 8,000 people at the Erie Insurance Arena, and to really see. I mean, Joel, I'm gobsmacked and sometimes speechless, and I think that's a tough thing to say about me is that I'm at a loss for words. But when we saw the tickets just start to take off at the pace they took off, it was really encouraging, that people said they wanted this and they actually did. And what was also encouraging was that, we had folks, in our own backyard, of course, registering coming to this event, but, we haven't done the full count yet, but, we had folks that, came up from Florida, came east from California. And we actually saw that last year with Representative Liz Cheney, who was in conversation with renowned theologian in Erie, Sister Joan Chittister. We had people coming from Maine, we had people coming from Illinois, we had people coming from all over the country. And I think it's a real testament to what we've been able to grow and develop over the past 17 years that now it is, of course, still something first and foremost for folks in Erie, but we can also say we're playing our part in getting people to Erie, not just the speakers, but other people coming in, spending their dollars in our community, getting to know Erie a little bit better, and hanging out around what it is that we're doing. And that's really, I think, just something that thrills me, Joel.
There's no doubt about it, and it was certainly was a friendly crowd for the former president there, and he can talk, right? I mean, I feel like our buddy Steve Scully asked one question, 20 minutes later was ready for the follow up.
Well, and that's one of the things that so I clearly do not disagree with you, and I think that that's one of the things that is so remarkable in my opinion about the former presidents that we've hosted is that they are talented orators and vastly different in how they deliver. But certainly President Obama has been known to be a talented orator and a terrific storyteller. And so, to be able to sit back and listen without becoming disengaged and without pulling back, and without saying, like, oh, I'm a little bored here. I heard that from nobody,
Nobody.
So Steve's the best in the business when it comes to this stuff. So, of course, I want him to be able to ask as many questions as he can. But I think their conversation, really struck a chord, not just with Erie, but I think the nation, seeing the coverage that happened the very next morning of that,
Yeah.
and being able to really lift that up and put Erie's platform, out onto a national and international level. I had former Global Summit speakers, who are from the UK writing and saying, this is the headline in, BBC right now. Like
Wow.
this is happening over here. And yeah, there's something cool about seeing that. And not just because JES gets lifted up, but because Erie, Pennsylvania does.
I got to ask you, I there, what I thought it was really cool that he had an encounter with local school kids, the former president and former President Obama, and just kind of, I mean, was he kind of his typical, Obama cool backstage when you introduce yourself and so on?
So I don't take for granted that one of the blessings of the work I get to do is I get to meet a lot of impressive people,
Yeah.
and I get to be in the company of brilliant minds, much much more brilliant than mine, and often on stage with them, and so I don't take that for granted. I will say I was a bit starstruck, the same way I was with President Bush.
Mhm.
Of there is just a different aura about these people when you get a chance to be in their company. And so yes, there was like the Obama cool, but also just this warmth, like that he's a real live human being and is present to the moment. And so to go back to where you started with this, Joel, with the students, the fact that his team had learned about, that this opportunity for service had been organized and that they wanted to do something, like to show appreciation for the students, I just thought, was incredibly powerful and meaningful. Of course, if we take a look back at the biography of President Obama, his community service is where he gets started, and really starts to see a pathway forward. And so it was so encouraging to see Erie's public schools organize a day of service to help those experiencing homelessness, those in the downtown area, through a number of different means and avenues to connect with them And then to learn that it wasn't just a one-off, and that, oh, President Obama's coming to town, let's do this, but that they're planning to make this an annual thing for
Oh,
students.
good.
They come back to school and they engage in a day of service in their community and find ways to help, I think is incredibly powerful. And I think to me that's it. Like that's what we're trying to do here is that it's not about the event or a series of events, but really how can we start conversations, advance conversations, get people plugged in, and to see Erie's Public Schools under the excellent leadership of Superintendent Dr. Gibbs and School Board President Dr. Brenneman, come around this idea to say, here is somebody to whom community service meant so much and paved a pathway forward, at least started it, that they ended up being the president of the United States, that there's an opportunity to lift that kind of dedication to community up and then to be rewarded in that moment of to get to meet him and to see the students, interacting, who knows, Joel, maybe there's a future US president amongst that crowd coming out of Erie,
Absolutely.
Pennsylvania that had the chance to meet the 44th.
That's remarkable. One last comment about the Obama appearance here. Again, it was the highest attended JES event in history, right? I mean,
Correct.
yeah, I mean that's huge, and the impact of it on a national and it, like you say, an international scale hit the BBC, hit CNN. It was on the Today Show the next day. Um, it went to show the kind of the timeliness of his appearance in Erie and the relevance that at least the national and international press wanted to hear from the former president, that this is kind of a rarity to have him weigh in. And remember, this was within days of the Charlie Kirk assassination. He was very relevant. I mean, and impassioned about reverting to basic norms and basic decency, and that we don't shoot the people on the other side of our politics. I mean,
And
he was right in the moment.
and really, I would applaud the president, for one, being willing to speak about that issue and to not shy away from it, but really use the moment to lean in and to say that, of course we can disagree, but that should never lead to political violence. That should never lead to violence, period. And I was so encouraged to see, again, I think putting Erie's, best foot forward in that, one, we not only had the people, attending in person, but, we had a live stream element to this in which people could watch virtually. But to see the fact that less than 12 hours from the event start time, that the video of the event in Erie, the JES Global Summit event, a conversation with President Barack Obama was posted on their YouTube, and I think that that's where they knew, the power of that moment. And two, I think just, not taking for granted that President Obama does not do a lot of these engagements, speaking engagements, only a handful of them a year. And so, to come to Erie, to be willing to go to a place that I think most often people show up when, it's either an election year or, midterm election year. And that's when we're, getting national attention. And that's when people want to talk about politics because, of course, we're a bellwether county in a swing state. And so the people pay attention. But here's somebody, here to share insights and observations and not ask for something, not ask for donations, not ask for a vote, not ask for, but to be with the community and present to the community, I thought was just an incredibly powerful evening.
Well, kudos again to the JES for that really historic event here in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's always history when a former or current president comes to your town. 422, we're going to take our first break. We have 16 other events to talk about here. We're going to talk about them with Ben Speggen here on Talk Erie. Talking the Global Summit 17 from the Jefferson Educational Society here on Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. Ben Speggen is with us. And Ben, let's get right into this because this all starts on Tuesday.
It does, Joel, and we're excited to get into the full swing of things. I mentioned again, the event with President Barack Obama, a special event starting a little early, but now, as tradition, we're hitting the middle of October and we're getting rolling. In fact, starting on Tuesday, October 14th, with Dr. Jane Arbuckle-Petro. And the really exciting thing about this is that she is a remarkably accomplished individual, and we're going to get a chance to talk about her journey. The title of the talk is Power of Saying Yes, and she's really been a trailblazer and a glass ceiling breaker in many regards. But I think what is particularly exciting about this event, Joel, is that she's an Erie native. She's one of our own, proud graduate of Strong Vincent, 1964,
Wow.
class of 64. So a chance to welcome one of our own back, which of course we do every year, as we now have, for more than a decade, honoring folks that have had remarkable accomplishments and achievements that have not just made their hometown proud, but really had impact wide and far. And so she is the recipient this year of the Thomas B. Hagen Dignitas Award, named for, of course, one of Erie's leading citizens, Tom Hagen, who's continued to be a model of service and commitment to the region and to progress. Dignitas being fancy speak Latin for first amongst equals, but a real chance to shine on one of our own. And the great thing about Dr. Petro is that she's going to be able to talk about those accomplishments, including Joel. She has performed surgery on all 7 continents.
Yeah, it means that means down in Antarctica. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
it's incredible.
Yes. She was part of a 10-person crew that was down there, and it turned out somebody had to have surgery on the crew. And so all of a sudden, these doctors are springing into action. And so, I mean, I've only been to 2 continents, and maybe I've done a few impressive things on 1 or 2 of them. But, this is all 7 continents doing surgery, including going into, troubled areas throughout the globe, because she's a plastic surgeon. So she's worked with burn victims, children born with birth defects like cleft lip and palate, and gone into places like Ghana, gone into places like Colombia, gone into places like Palestine, but also had a remarkable career here in the States. She's a proud Penn State University grad. She was part of the 2nd graduating class in Penn State Hershey. So naturally, another connection to Erie with the Penn State system, being a Penn State alum. So we get to really hear about the impact that she's had over decades, and not just a surgeon, but an activist and somebody who's been outspoken about human rights, and working toward that, bringing medicine to the people. So I'm really excited about this one, Joel. It's, again, a chance to lift up one of our own, be proud, a proud Strong Vincent Colonel that we get to celebrate.
Before we get to the break of the bottom, we've got to talk about David Lamont because this is the event that is part of the Global Summit that is done in tandem with Gannon University's READS program. Talk about you're changing the world, whether you like it or not. So
Right,
get with it,
Right. You got to change the world, you darn kids. No, I mean, I think that this is so timely, Joel, as a topic, because I think that one of the challenges that no doubt many of us feel as if we're facing is that in a rapidly changing world, an ever evolving changing world, where news is changing by not just the hour, but sometimes the minute or second. Like, what kind of impact can we have? What can we actually do? Well, it turns out, no matter what, we're changing the world. And we're going to hear from David Lamont, who's an accomplished author, singer-songwriter, and filmmaker. And as you mentioned, this is a Gannon READS event, READS being the acronym for Reading to Enhance the Awareness of Diverse Society. And this is named after Dr. David Kozak, who was actually on the JES Board of Trustees, the late Dr. Kozak, and his wife, Mary Ann. I had the great pleasure of having a class with Dr. Dr. Kozak when I was a student at Gannon. So, grateful to see that this is such an important part of their curriculum. All first year students reading this book. That's the title of the talk is the title of the book. So these students have read that. The entire campus is invited to be a part of it. And we're really honored because Gannon has been a terrific sponsor and partner of the Global Summit. And when they were thinking of this event and wanting to host in the fall, it's a natural partnership to make this part of the Global Summit. And it really allows us to have that intergenerational learning opportunity. Our folks, young students connecting in the same room, learning about the same topic.
And that one there is at the Warner, so take note of that. Lots of room for everybody. Got to take our break. It's Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show, 4:30, as we talk about the Global Summit of the Jefferson Educational Society. 434, it's Talk Erie and the Joel and Natalie Show. We are live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio. And we're talking about the Global Summit from the Jefferson Educational Society. It's number 17, and there's 17 events. We've talked about 3 of them, so we've got a motor on here. Vice President Ben Speggen is with us here. And Ben, I'm interested in this next one. We're talking about on October 20th, so this is literally coming right up here within the next week or so. From Washington to Trump, the U.S. presidency and America at 250 with Lindsay Chervinsky and Chris Whipple. And talk about this because this is the executive director of the George Washington Library. Didn't know you had one.
So he did and he does, and it is housed at Mount Vernon, the home of George Washington. And Joel, we had mentioned earlier, you had asked about the theme, and you were talking about because I made the flippant joke like we're kind of like Seinfeld, right? The theme is there is no theme because there's a little bit for everybody. But you were so smart to pick up on that we are beginning our programming around the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and so. This is a great way to take a look at the American presidency and really put 2 people that are the pole points of history, so to speak. And so we have Lindsay Chervinsky, who is the executive director of the George Washington Library at Mount Vernon. And we have critically acclaimed author Chris Whipple, who's been covering the modern American presidency, including his most recent book, Uncharted, taking a look at how Trump beat Biden, Harris, and the odds in the wildest, he calls it wildest campaign in history. And so
I mean, that is quite a superlative, Ben. Oh my gosh.
So that's why I can't wait to hear the answer of like, well, what was second? So what comes in second if this is the wildest? So we have a chance to hear from somebody who's intimately familiar with the modern American presidency, and then somebody who has studied. So Lindsay Chervinsky has books not just on Washington but also Adams. So really looking at the founding, and so we can go back in history and say, how did the founders envision what the executive branch would look like, how it would function? Because I remember from the Global Summit event with John Dickerson and reading his book, about the hardest job in the world, the American presidency, and how it's changed. Ben Franklin thought that there should be 3 executives and that they should really work in a commissioner form of government instead of just one. And so how do we get from Washington to Trump, our current president, Donald Trump? And how has that changed over time, over 250 years? So 2 voices. Can't wait to hear from. That conversation is going to be moderated by our own Steve Scully. So he'll be in town for that to provide his insights and expertise on that as well. So really excited for that. Monday, October 20th.
Yeah, people can't get enough of talking about the presidency, can they?
They really can, and I think that we have certainly seen the power of the presidency increase over time. That's what Dickerson would argue, and that more and more is thought about with the American presidency and what the president means to the nation. And I think a lot of that, Joel, comes from the thought that it's one person that we can turn attention to, one person that addresses the nation, but also the role of consoler in chief. When a national tragedy happens or a national disaster happens, it's not as if all 100 members of the Senate pack up and go to that site. The president goes, so there's something extra foisted upon that branch, and not any sort of legal responsibility within the framing of the Constitution. There's no amendment that says, you have to show up to flood ravaged wherever, but yet they do. And so how has that changed? How has that changed with the scope of our country? How do we get from there to here? What might the founders say about what we have today? What might we learn about, from the founders that's still applicable? The timing's excellent on this, Joel, to really mark that 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Let's make a quick rabbit trail here. That talk on the 20th, on Monday the 20th, will be in person at Yale Ballroom, but also virtually. It will be available virtually. So several of these JES Global Summit conversations are available online. Can you explain how that works?
Sure. So naturally, if folks are able and they are in the area, there is something powerful about the shoulder-to-shoulder experience. But We learned during the pandemic, Joel, when you might recall, many places had, deemed not essential, had to shut their doors, and we had to figure out what was next. And we pivoted quickly, where it was, look, keep the team together, keep the learning opportunities going, and let's find a way to connect with people screen to screen. And because we've been able to see the reach and impact of that, that's something that we don't want to take away, from our audience, and especially for folks throughout the country. We've connected with Erie expats that are, settled elsewhere, and they have an affinity and natural connection to Erie, Pennsylvania. We've connected with people that are just interested in the type of work we do, and want to participate and engage in the kind of learning exchange that we have. And so, opportunity for folks to, connect with us virtually, especially if you're not able to, or can't for whatever reason join with us in person. We don't want to exclude you from that opportunity. And it's a good opportunity for me to remind folks, Joel, that people can see a whole cache of videos from our events from the past. They just have to head to YouTube. You look for Jefferson Educational Society, you find our channel, and you can see tons of videos there, including all of last year's Global Summit
Wow.
and Global Summits the years before. Again, there's something really powerful about being in the room when it happens. I'm taking a line from Hamilton, of course, was not a president, but is important to the founding. There's something important about being in the room where it happens, as Burr says in that play so many times. But there's an opportunity to connect in different ways. So we don't want to make sure anybody's excluded from what it is we're doing.
Another one that'll be available both in person and virtual is this Journey of Perseverance, an evening with Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly, certainly the former Bills quarterback, beloved throughout the region here. Talk quickly about this appearance here, because again, it's another, you're tapping in on that sports interest that we have here in Erie.
We really are, and that's one of the things that we've learned, thanks to people coaching us, pun fully intended, to say sports is important. What about some programming on sports? Last year we had Stephen A. Smith. Year before we had John Calipari. We've had sports reporter and writer for not just Sports Illustrated but 60 Minutes, John Wertheim, a few times, and this year we also have Woj from ESPN, the ESPN insider, who's now with St. Bonaventure, working at a university. We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, but of course, Jim Kelly has, an enormous role in not just Western New York, but Northwestern Pennsylvania. We broadcast the Bills here. Folks are Bills fans, and here's somebody that really has shown perseverance and beat the odds at many turns, not just in his professional career, but he'll talk about those four F's, and he'll talk about faith, family, friends, and fans. And part of that family is the challenge of losing his only son Hunter, but now working through a foundation to raise funds to support medical needs for the youth, but then also his own medical challenges. He's beat cancer not once, not twice. I mean, he keeps coming back on this. So it's not just for the sports fans, right? Of course, I suspect we're going to see some number 12 Buffalo Bills jerseys in the audience that night. We welcome that. People don't have to get dressed up for this stuff. We'd love to see the jerseys. But he's going to talk about more than just sports. And so it's a way that maybe you're not the biggest sports fan or aficionado, but you can come and really learn from somebody who's really, beat the odds at many different turns and has a great message to give, a journey of perseverance.
That's Wednesday, October 22nd. The day after that, as a student of leadership, I'm looking forward to General Joseph Votel, Colonel Katie Crome, leading through listening, the importance of communication and feedback.
We've seen, Joel, now a real appetite for programming around leadership. Last year, we had Joe Davis of Boston Consulting Group talk about his book, The Generous Leader. Here's what's really fun about this one is that General Votel and Colonel Crom, they're working on a book. Now Colonel Crom served with General Votel as his attaché and an aide de camp, so they know each other quite well. They're working on a book that's nearly finished. We in Erie, Pennsylvania, get the sneak peek of that.
Nice.
And we get to learn leadership lessons from people who have served. And really General Votel, who is retired, continues to serve, in various capacities, whether it's boards, giving back. I mean, this is a person that, upon retirement didn't say, well, that's it, and I'm hanging it up and I'm just going to take up some hobbies and call it a nice quiet life. Still very active. And then Colonel Crom, who's active in the Pentagon right now. Of course, she won't be speaking in a professional capacity. She'll be talking from her personal experience. But I think that that's one of the things our audience is hungry for is what lessons can we learn from leaders? How can we connect? How can we be better leaders and followers ourselves? And they're going to make the case, and I don't think they're wrong. Listening is a really important part of leading. So we get a chance to hear from them. That'll be at the JES. That is happening Thursday, October 23rd.
On the 24th, Europe without the U.S., the future of NATO and the European Union, Mark Gittenstein. On Friday, the 24th, NATO, wow. Like they're having their moment, aren't they?
I think both NATO and the EU are having moments, and so for this one, this is again an opportunity where these are big important issues, period, full stop. But here, right now, this is incredibly timely, for us to be talking about this and thinking about the US's role in this. Now, naturally, I'm excited about, thinking about, the various movements throughout Europe post World War II, particularly thinking about the Marshall Plan, because Joel, you remember I'm from southwestern Pennsylvania. I spent an awful lot of time in Fayette County, in Uniontown, Pennsylvania in particular, which is the birth city of George Marshall himself, who went on to draft the Marshall Plan, which essentially lifts Europe out of the economic turmoil, cultural turmoils experienced from World War II. But here we get a chance to really have that honest conversation. What do these two entities look like, NATO and the EU, with or without the US? Because what we've seen here in recent times is that our philosophies, guided by, as we were talking about earlier, the executive branches, those can change administration to administration. And so, what is the US's role in this now? And what is it moving forward? And how do we think about that, through international relations and politics, but also how do we think about that through business ties? I mean, North America still claims most of the highest producing companies from a business perspective. Europe has, one or two. So when we're looking about economic development and ties, how does that work? And who better to learn from than the ambassador to the EU, Mark Gittenstein, to welcome Ambassador Gittenstein to Erie, Pennsylvania to talk about this. I'm excited. This is a conversation I have the chance to lead, so he and I will be on stage together Friday, October 24th at the Jefferson Educational Society.
The future of college athletics, sports media, where they are now, where they are headed. Adrian Wojnarowski, or otherwise known as Woj on ESPN. That's Monday the 27th. Again, you mentioned this, and the whole name, likeness, right? Name, image, likeness. I mean, that whole thing is, and the portals. College athletics have blown up.
And so I'm going to show how contemporary and relevant I am, Joel, and I'm going to quote Bob Dylan and say the times they are a changing,
Yeah,
and that's what's happening with
yeah.
college athletics, right? Is that before we didn't see we saw that these athletes were not able to profit off of their own name, image, and likeness, and I'll just give one example. You think about video games, and how many people are playing, NCAA video games, and they're controlling these athletes, and you're plugged into this game, yet those athletes aren't profiting at all from that. Well, that's changing, and so what does that mean? So we wanted to bring in somebody who's done a 180 on the court. Here you have Woj, like the Woj with Woj bombs, who went all the way up from a sports reporter in New England to being like the ESPN basketball insider, dropping the Woj bomb, so to speak, and revolutionizing the way that sports are reported on. Who decided to walk away from a multi-million-dollar contract to go back to a university that's given so much to him an opportunity to be the general manager of the men's basketball team. And these are uncharted waters for a position like this. So Woj is uniquely positioned to talk not just about how sports reporting, sports media has been revolutionized and his role in it and where he sees that going, but also talk about places like St. Bonaventure, what they're doing around name, image, and likeness. And we have the good fortune that St. Bonaventure is, just a stone's throw up the road from Erie, Pennsylvania. And once we found out that's where he's going to be, we reached out and said, come talk to our audience about this, because this is something that is really important as we all gather on Saturdays to watch, college sports. What does this mean? Where is this headed? This is what we're going to find out.
On the 29th, Wednesday, the latest discoveries in the universe. again, one of the keystones of the Global Summit this year, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Wow, big one.
Right. I'm thinking at this
At the
point, do we need
Bayfront. At the Bayfront.
at the Bayfront Convention Center, do we need a name change at this point? Is this like the Universal Summit or the
Yeah.
Galactical Summit at this point? But look, like I have a deep appreciation for science, even though that's where I know enough to say I don't know a lot. But this is somebody that I really admire because I really think that the same way that I would remember my parents talking about how somebody like Carl Sagan made complex things accessible by explaining it. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson really has that ability to take something that is beyond my comprehension, but yet not make me feel so infinitesimal and dumb about it that I can get excited about this. And so latest discoveries, like what's new, what's happening right now. The director of the Hayden Planetarium coming into Erie, Pennsylvania to talk about that. Bayfront Convention Center. We still have tickets available, but they are going fast. So I would say, folks, do not sleep on this one. Be sure you get your tickets now. We're really looking forward to this. One of the things that from folks that I've talked to that have seen him live, he brings 110% every time. So this is going to be an exciting one.
So that's October. Let's jump into November. I love that that for many years now, the Global Summit has had an urban conversation like this one. American Progress from the Front Lines, examining local level action, innovation, and solutions to cities' challenges in chaotic times. Barry, Fisher, and Peduto.
Yeah, so we have three mayors coming in to talk about this, and Joel, you're absolutely right. Like I think that one of the things that has been so encouraging to see in Erie over the past decade and a half is this reimagining of who we are and who we can be. And many legacy metros, that's a struggle that they're dealing with, is the coming out of a post-industrial identity. Where do you go next? Who is it you want to be? And Bruce Katz, quotes Dolly Parton often of like be who you are and do it with intention. Something that I'm paraphrasing it. But it really started with the Metropolitan Revolution back in 2014, and we've had this focus on how can we have conversations with other folks to learn about best practices from other cities? How can we learn about ways to scale ideas that will fit the make and model of Erie that we might want to explore? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What lessons can we learn along the way? So here we have three different mayors. We have William Peduto, Bill Peduto from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have Richard J. Barry, R.J. Barry from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Greg Fisher from Louisville, Kentucky. And so Dems and Republicans on this panel, three mayors that actually get along and can sit together and talk that, they may not be the same political party, but they believe in a lot of the same things in driving progress in their cities and what they've done. So an excellent opportunity to learn from them, and see what kind of guidance and what kind of insights they can provide Erie, Pennsylvania.
Another big, pillar of the JES, faith, religion, and American politics, a conversation with Vice President Pence and Paul McNulty. This was another big announce earlier this year that the former vice president coming to talk about the faith, about his faith,
And so I appreciate the opportunity that we can in the same run of events have a Democratic president and a Republican vice president and offer that to our community the same. And here we have an opportunity, to say this is where we as an organization, the JES, are nonpartisan. We're not advocating or supporting or endorsing either side. We're creating a platform where these conversations and dialogues can happen. And of course, we know the separation of church and state. People are going to say that ad nauseum, but no doubt, one's individual faith influences how they think about things. In fact, one of our founders, the Reverend Charles Brock, was working on a project called Holy Warrior Presidents and taking a look at how their faith influenced their decisions when it came to conflict and other things. here we have a chance to learn from Vice President Mike Pence, and to be in conversation with Paul McNulty, the former president of Grove City College, and to be able to host that at the JES, which is still an active synagogue. So,
Right.
like talk about the role of faith in America and how we navigate that and how we have these conversations of being able to put this over there while deciding this, but to acknowledge it and to, be able to entertain two ideas at the same time, I think is something worth hearing. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Vice President Mike Pence and President Paul McNulty of Grove City College just down the road on I-79.
And again, that one is at the Bayfront as well. So I'm going to just motor because we're down to 3 minutes here. And we've got autocrats versus Democrats on November 6th. China, Russia, America, and the new global disorder. Another big global summit type of
It
conversation
really
here.
is. Ambassador Michael McFaul will be here to talk about his new book, which is coming out right around the time this event's happening. So it's a hot off the presses talk. A chance to hear from another former ambassador talk about international and global issues right here on the Global Summit stage.
November 7th on a Friday, All Too Clear, exploring invasive species beneath the surface of the Great Lakes. Again, very, very regional topic. I'm going to keep moving here. Carson the Magnificent, a look at the iconic TV host and his impact on comedy today. Mike Thomas and Journey Gunderson. You have a couple of media-based ones, too, here, including Juan Williams coming on to talk about new prize for these eyes, the rise of America's second civil rights movement. Before that, Humanity 2050, the future of our world, our universe, ourselves, Charles Liu. Again, lots of different diversity here.
We really do. We try to, again, make sure we've got something for everybody. And I think, a way to, make sure we're doing that is one, we're talking about the environment. That's important to Erie, Pennsylvania, because of our connection to the Great Lakes. We make Pennsylvania a Great Lakes state. So let's go and watch an award-winning film done by award-winning filmmakers and then have a panel discussion afterwards to talk about that. But just up the road in Jamestown, New York, we've got the National Comedy Center. And let's talk about the importance of comedy. And Mike Thomas has finished the book, Carson the Magnificent. So a chance to look at that. Humanity 2050, we've got to wonder where the heck we're headed, Joel. And let's bring in a futurist to talk about that. Juan Williams, as you mentioned, again, a chance to talk about a book, get a copy of the book, get the book signed while you're there. And then closing out the November run with Larry Sabato, the director and founder of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia, famed political analyst, Emmy award-winning, contributor, a chance to really think about what role media is playing. The medium is the message. Let's talk about media's impact on national politics. And of course, we're going to take a look at 2025 and the outcomes of various races. And we're also going to look ahead to 2026, which we know is midterm election year.
Finally, the last big pillar there, Henry Louis Gates, an evening exploring your roots on
Yeah, very
December 4th.
Very excited. So we know people need a break, right? At least our team does. And there's Thanksgiving. So we'll come back in December and close out just like we started early in September. So here, Thursday, December 4th, Henry Louis Gates, of course, of PBS fame with Discovering Your Roots, being able to talk about his work, his power, his message, the many folks that he's talked to. I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it's a great way to send off the rest of the year, Joel.
Ben, I got to thank you. We're out of time. JESErie.org. For all the tickets, they're still just $25, and students go for free, which is astounding. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it very much.
Always appreciate the opportunity to be here, Joel. You're the best in the biz.
You're so great. Let's go to news next here. It's Talk Erie.